Hi everyone, I'm going to give a quick abstract of this paper on the elements and Beyzaie, and then go on to the paper itself. A drawing on the work of Stanislav Grof on holotropism and transpersonal psychology, this piece considers the role of the elements and of the Tazia passion play in the mythic films of Bahram Beyzaie. The argument develops to underscore the ways in which the elements infuse Beyzaie's films with a sense of coevalness. By this I mean the ever-presence of all cultures, past and present, in Iranian history. Then the paper moves to demonstrate Beyzaie's use of the tropes of the Tazia to root these disparate cultures on and in national soil. The primordial female is both witness and alchemist, calling into being a new way of seeing in film, a vision of the oneness of the world's pasts and their continued presence. The elements have inspired tragedies and myths of all sorts, and in Beyzaie's of both nature and the elements are charged with the movement of the drama. In Bashu, the little stranger, the wind may play a small part, for example, but we have to admit that a minor role is an inadequate descriptor for the role of the wind in this film. A young boy, Bashu, has escaped the destruction of the war in Iraq, between Iran and Iraq in the south, and has made his way to the northern regions of Iran, where verdant fields greet him. Nai, a farmer whose husband has found employment as a soldier in the war, rises amidst these fields. Her husband has left her on the farm to take care of their two children, the fire, and importantly, the crops that she labors day and night over to grow and to animate with life. Bashu hides about on her farm like a wild, scared, helpless creature, and is surprised and then delighted when Nai skillfully lures him in with food and water. She cares for him over time as one of her children, and he in turn helps her with the chores on the farm, all to the dismay of Nai's relatives, neighbors, and the disparaging words of the other villagers. Nai and her husband communicate with each other by letter. Not able to read and write, Nai dictates her letters to the village doctor, who in turn reads her husband's words to her and her children in a nearby courtyard. It is with the penultimate epistolary exchange between this husband and wife that a violent wind arrives, and the young, dark-skinned stranger Bashu disappears into the wind, deserted, bereft of his own family who died in the war in the south and now abandoned again. Nai's husband has deemed her acceptance of Bashu, a stranger into the home, as not only costly, an extra mouth to feed, but also a risk, for how can one trust a stranger? Spirited, the wind blows the open letter onto the fields where Nai is working. She had hidden her husband's damning words under a mat when his letter arrived, but realizes immediately when she grasps for it in the wind that Bashu has himself read it and that he has disappeared into it in distress. The wind speaks the anguish of Bashu's heart to Nai in words she can comprehend, and thus comes to represent one of the ways in which this elemental force takes on a tangible form and a transpersonal consciousness in Bahram Beyzaie's rural films. To understand this, I refer to the pioneering work of the Czech psychiatrist Stanislav Grof. Grof suggests that everything in our everyday states of consciousness has a corresponding subjective experience that may shatter the most fundamental metaphysical assumptions of the Newtonian Cartesian paradigm and of the materialistic worldview. Beyzaie's 12 major directorial efforts in fiction film to date either make reference to the Tazia or stage it. In Margi az Degard, made in 1981, one of Beyzaie's early post-revolutionary films, a circular cinematic mise-en-scène signals the film's affinity with the Tazia, which in Iranian cultural history at least stages the Karbala carnage of Imam Hussein and his family on an open circular stage. For the Tazia performance itself, the audience typically sits on the ground around a central circular platform in a large courtyard, sometimes covered by an enormous white tent. In its traditional form, the drama takes place both on and off stage. The Tazia actors or role carriers who enact the historical events surrounding the carnage and martyrdom of the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, Imam Hussein, and the family in Karbala in this passion play mingle with the audience members, staging battles in narrow corridors stretched between the spectator participants. The staging of the Tazia emphasizes in this way the temporal conjunction between the present and the past by situating the audience in the present as mourners lamenting the historical battle and the death of the Shia heroes, while role carriers for the heroic figures resurrect history in their performance. As if a manifestation of a subjective or transpersonal state of consciousness, the Tazia's circular stage is never really reset or transformed in any major way. In fact, any change of scene is affected by the movement of the role carrier himself. To go from one place to another, the actor merely announces his intention to travel and often walks or rides on horseback once around the circular stage to arrive at the new location. Time and space are are rearrange themselves around the figure that is both there and then, and here and now. This integration of time and space, of past and present, of here and there, sets the tone of the performance in which the blurring of eras and spheres ensures the blurring of the differences that separate sensuous reality from the imaginal world and of those that establish an actual historical happening as discontinuous with the time of its performative transformation. The blurring of the distinctions between past and present in this performance assumes a foreknowledge of the historical happening on the part of the audience as well. This consciousness of history instills a sense of magical knowingness in the characters themselves in the course of the performance, even as the drama insists on maintaining the distinct individuality of the historical characters from its role carriers. As the imaginal and messianic world of the past future reveals itself on stage, the audience becomes a resurrected body, fully conscious of the fullness of the past that is resurrected in the future that is also a now time. On stage, the characters speak of the past, the present, and the future in one breath, as if the events that come to pass in the historical drama have already taken place and will take place again. Thus, every role carrier openly anticipates his character's ultimate destiny in the battle as his very own, and also recognizes in death a future victory in which the family of the Prophet will emerge as hero martyrs for a Shia nation that is yet to materialize as the future body of Shia Iran. The Tazia's characteristic sense that knowledge embraces all time and that characters in effect know their own end configures Beyzaie's narrative articulation in the film The Travelers, Mehran, made in 1992. What follows is an example. As the character Mahrab Marafi's gestures of direct address in the film's opening sequence reiterate the film's intimate connection with the Tazia tradition, in which role carriers at once identify with the heroes of the drama in a performative reenactment and simultaneously dissociate themselves from the heroes in reverence for the historical specificity of their lives and identities. Time, past, uh, present, and future collapse, spaces run into each other, identities melt into one another, and then separate. The Tazia provides in this way the formal tropes of Beyzaie's cinematic oeuvre. Beyzaie's cinematic oeuvre too, in Beyzaie's cinematic oeuvre too, nature and the elements meld and are transformed, animated, and anthropomorphized in what we might call the film's transpersonal vision. Thus, Tara, in the ballad named for her, Cherike Tara, raises her sword against the wind and the sea, for the sea has taken her lover and drawn him into oblivion. Here, the wind is an anthropomorphized living consciousness at whom Tara lashes out her frustrations and with whom she negotiates the return of her lover. In Bashu, Beyzaie goes further to situate the mechanic and technical as part and parcel of the natural human environment, and thus moves to animate the bodies of his characters in ways that take on the characteristics of the very technology that imprints and projects them on celluloid. Consider the following. A pan across a rice field. Rest to frame Bashu humming and drumming on a homespun instrument. The village children approach to ask Bashu what he is up to. The plants grow to the sound, Bashu explains, recalling Nai's comment in an early scene about her own use of the sound makers to help her crops grow. As the children watch and giggle, one of them starts a beat with a pair of utensils. Another picks up two big rocks and follows the beat. The rhythm is perceptibly mechanical, and the children create vertical motion with their bodies to the cadence of the musical instruments as Bashu continues to dance to his own drum. In a shot that captures the lower bodies of the children, hands and knees move mechanically from side to side as if they're moving parts of a factory line. Repetitive and measured, they move to the rhythm of the sound of the musical beat. Indeed, the mimetic gestures of the children playing boars and pretending to be growing harvest in the continuation of the scene only serve to reinforce the consciousness that permeates this earlier moment in which the film captures the human body's mimetic correspondences to things, objects beyond nature. Though boars and harvest in later shots, the children's bodies reinscribe in the scene the materiality of the celluloid's movements through the tracks of the projector in their mechanical motion and movement. stranger, Ayat in Stranger and the Fog, is washed up on shore in his small fishing boat. He comes upon a quiet village devastated by the death of its best fisherman. The fisherman has left a young wife behind, a widow. Now Rana is alone, and in her anguish, she is still suckling a child. The film, as Hamid Dabashi neatly describes it, is rooted in a twilight zone of land and sea, life and death, reality and myth. The village is somewhere in the north of Iran and nowhere at all. Although the characters speak in formal Persian tongue, the costumes, especially those of the invaders, who from time to time disrupt and disturb the peace of the village so as to claim Ayat and death, look like props from Kurosawa's samurai adventure dramas, flat hats and heavy sheets that hang like broad shoulders over long wooden sticks. This world, the mythic Persia of Ferdowsi's poetry, is populated by characters that remind us of the mythic cinematic, that is, of the valiant warriors of Kurosawa's Japan. In particular, this note in passing that the final epic battle of the stranger in the fog honors the great scene of battle ending Kurosawa's epic, The Seven Samurai, recognizing thereby its importance to the development of Iran's national cinematic language. These same ever-present and colliding mythic states of the film also animate Ayaz's emotional consciousness in a range of feelings sometimes referred to by Stanislav Grof as holotropic. This is what Grof says: feelings of ecstatic rapture, heavenly bliss, and peace that passeth all understanding, to episode of abysmal terror, murderous anger, utter despair, consuming guilt, and other forms of unimaginable emotional suffering that matches the description of the tortures of hell in the great religions and literatures of the world. The Wind thus brings the history of the world's past, of film technology's gains, and of myth together, not only in Stranger in the Fog, but in Beyzaie's frames more generally. These he then grounds in the specifically national by activating them within the tropes of the Tazia. In the Tazia, both the here and the hereafter are interchangeable, and all spaces and times collide in a theater in the round as if in natural continuity. This is as true in Cherike Tara, where in the midst of the villagers' performance of the Tazia, the historical man tells Tara of his tribe and his forgotten history, as it is of Gharib Vameh, Stranger in the Fog, in which Ayat finds himself between two worlds, the here and the hereafter, always center stage in a circular theater that is also the village. In short, Ayat embodies a state of holotropic consciousness for the film's audience, a condition that embraces a broad spectrum of transpersonal phenomena and emotional states that include the feelings of oneness with others, with nature, with the past, and indeed with an unknown universe. We should be cognizant that it is Beyzaie's signature circular camera movement that produces a tazia in the round and a holotropic sense of oneness in Bashu as well, though it does so differently than it does as narrative elements in Tara and Stranger in the Fog. In Bashu, a transpersonal vision merges and connects time and space as Nai dictates her final letter to her husband, this time with the help of Bashu, who she describes as her son, who, like all children, is the offspring of the sun and the earth. She dictates her letter partially in the language of the book as she paces about the courtyard, hanging up wet clothes to dry. As she moves, she, an embodiment of the force of nature, the camera follows her, and we see the oven in her courtyard burning high in the wind in the background of the mise-en-scène. She moves, and as she moves, the war front appears in the background, where her husband will receive her words in letter form. Then her movements again reshape space and disrupt time, as if the material world wraps around her form, and the site of the war is replaced once more by the courtyard where Bashu dutifully writes down Nai's every word as she speaks them to her husband.
برای نوشتن این نامه نزد همسایه نرفتم. این نامه را پسر من می نویسد که نام او باشوست. ایشان در همه کارها ما را کمک می کند. و نانی که می خورد از کاری که می کند کمتر است. و آن نان را من از لقمه خودم می دهم. او مثل همه بچه ها فرزند آفتاب و زمین است. و کم کم از 6 تا حرف که میزند 3 تا حرف آن مرا حالی می شود.
The wind that has brought the history of the past and the cultures of the East and West to the primordial feminine characters, Tara and Anna, in Beyzaie's oeuvre, speaks in Nai's tongue in Bashu and disrupts in her figure all spatial and temporal continuities, Tazia-like. Animated by the language of nature, and the wind in particular, this figure, Nai, escaped the new constraints placed on the representation of the female form and heterosexual relations in cinematic history under the rule of the Islamic Republic. It was the first female figure to do so. It is her vision in Bashu, a transpersonal vision of the elements that connects all times, all spaces, and all cultures, that in the 1980s set the stage for the undoing of a consciously isolationist representation of the nation in cinematic form. Thank you so much for listening.